You know that person that started at the same time as you but got promoted twice while you're still waiting for the first one? I used to think that they were just lucky, or brown-nosing, or working themselves to death. I was wrong about all three. After nearly 20 years at Amazon as a principal engineer, I figured out what separates the people who skyrocket from everybody else, and has nothing to do with just working harder. In this video, I'll share 3 specific behaviors that leaders look for when identifying high potential talent. It's not complicated and they won't burn you out. It's actually pretty simple, as long as you know what to look for. I spent many years in those rooms where we stack ranked employees. You know, where managers argue about who gets promoted and who gets let go because of performance reasons. And the thing that blew my mind was that the conversation was rarely about who worked the hardest. We were looking for different things, subtle signals that I didn't even know others were looking for until I made it into those performance meeting rooms. I'm from the big tech world, but these lessons are broadly applicable because whether you like it or not, you're constantly being judged at work. That's not inherently a bad thing, it's just reality. But it's really uncomfortable, and then you fall into this cycle where you get self-conscious about your actions because people are judging you, which leads you to do things that aren't who you are, which leads them to judge you unfairly because that's not who you are. The cycle is terrible and makes you feel like the people that get ahead of you are all fake, when really they've just found a way to present themselves that avoids that reoccurring cycle. If you like this type of content, I'd really appreciate it if you like this video and subscribe. It tells me that I'm on the right track. If there's a type of video you'd like to see, let me know in the comments. Let's just jump into it. First things first, everybody screws up. Projects fail, deadlines slip, code breaks. Who's accidentally dropped a production database table or accidentally deleted a prod AWS resource? The difference is what happens next. You might think that if you screw up, you're going to get judged as a low performer. That's only true if you have a consistent pattern of screwing up. This gets compounded if you try to hide your mistakes, blame others, or make the same mistakes over and over again. But you can actually turn mistakes into a signal that you have high potential. I'll show you by example. Let's take 3 people, Alice, Bob, and Chad. Let's say they work at a company where there's a consistent flow of projects that they work on individually, and the most important thing is that they deliver on time at high quality. Let's chart their past 10 projects. Alice is a consistent high performer. When a project comes in, she always gets it done, on time, and at high quality. Bob is inconsistent. He does really well sometimes, but then he'll mess up. He'll blame it on something. He'll deliver another couple of projects well. Then he'll make a mistake that he should have caught. And then there's Chad. He had a rough start. He made some mistakes and really screwed up. He also got unlucky and his first couple of projects went off the rails. Alice and Bob were kind of looking at each other, wondering if Chad was going to make it. But things are slowly getting better, and his last 5 projects show a nice upward trajectory. But it's not up to Alice's level or Bob's level when he does well. Of these 3 people, Alice, Bob, and Chad, who has the highest potential? And that's my first point. Potential is about your performance trend over time. As humans, we can't help but connect the dots and then project out into the future. In a situation where one of Alice, Bob, or Chad has to be let go because of a mandatory reduction in force, it's gonna be a toss-up between Bob or Chad. And I'd personally let go of Bob. When you screw up at work or you perceive your performance is lower than others because you just started, don't take that as a signal that you're not cut out for the job. The right way to frame it is that you've established a baseline. Own your mistakes or poor performance and think about how you can turn things around. If you can demonstrate a pattern of getting better and not regressing, you'll be marked as high potential. The slope of your performance can only be really high if you start relatively low. For those of you that know calculus, think of performance as velocity and potential as acceleration. Alice is high performance but low potential. Chad is moving slower than Alice but accelerating. That acceleration is what's going to save Chad from being marked as a low performer. If you make a mistake, put measures into place to never make that mistake again. If your last deliverable was low quality, that's fine as long as you make sure that the next one is better than the last. As long as you can show that you're accelerating, you're going to be marked as high potential. You know what's crazy about all of these high potential behaviors? Most people don't even know that they're missing them. And that's exactly why I'm pumped to talk about today's video sponsor, Strawberry.me. Here's the thing about blind spots. By definition, you can't see what you can't see. I spent years at work thinking I was doing everything right. Good work, solid results, positive feedback, but I was stuck. The frustrating part? I had no idea what I was missing. It wasn't until years later that I figured out my blind spots, but that was after countless dead ends. Man, I wish I had a career coach back then. Someone who could have pointed out what I literally couldn't see in myself. It would have saved me years of banging my head against the wall. That's what's so cool about Strawberry. They match you with coaches who are trained to spot exactly what you're missing. These aren't generic career advisors reading from a script. They're partners who help you see blind spots and build a concrete plan to fix them. Whether you're stuck watching others get promoted, trying to switch careers, or just sensing that something's holding you back, but you can't figure out what. Having an expert who can see what you can't is a game changer. And it's way more accessible than you think. Take their quiz at strawberry.me/engineered and grab your $50 credit. Links below. Thanks again to Strawberry for sponsoring today's video. For my second point, let me tell you the story of my first job delivering newspapers when I was 12 years old. 40 newspapers would get dropped off at my house at 4 a.m., and I had to deliver them to the houses on my route by 7 a.m. If it wasn't wet outside because of rain, I just needed to put them into a rubber band. If it was wet, then I also needed to put them into a plastic sleeve. The thing is, I grew up in the Seattle area, so I had to bag all of the papers most days, but even then I got done in under 2 hours. I only had the job for a year because by then I found out that I can make way more money making web pages for people. 2 weeks after I quit to get my last pay, I had to go to about 5 folks on my route who were past due to collect money. 12-year-old me knocked on their doors and asked them to square up. And they all asked, "What happened to you? The paper's been soaked in the rain for the past 2 weeks." Some people didn't want to pay up because their paper was thrown into the bushes in front of their house, or it didn't even have a rubber band on it and it got scattered everywhere due to the wind. I guess the person after me was in a rush. I took ownership of my own work. I bagged the papers on days that it might rain. I made sure that the paper was always on their doormat with the top of the paper facing up. It took like 5 extra minutes to make my customers happy. And that's my second point. People who take ownership at work are always labeled as high performers. This doesn't mean doing more work. It just means demonstrating that you care about your work, not just doing the bare minimum. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone asks a question about a project that you're working on. One person says, "I don't know, that's not my department," and leaves it at that. But someone who takes ownership says, "I don't know that off the top of my head, but let me find out who can answer that and I'll follow up with you by the end of the day." They're not really doing extra work. How much effort does it take to ask a question and to send an email? But they are taking responsibility for making sure the question gets answered. The first person technically did their job by being honest about not knowing, but the second person is the one that gets remembered as helpful and reliable and someone you want on your team. If you don't care, then you don't care. Look at this Steve guy. He's pretending to care about his work. What a tool. But caring about your work has this wonderful side benefit, which is that it combats burnout. Nothing burns you out faster than being forced to do work that you don't want to do. You start to resent the work and the people that force you to do it. Life's just so much more pleasant for everybody if you spend the time to put the newspaper in the bag and then put it on their doorstep. For my third point, let me tell you about something that happened during my first year at Amazon as an SDE. I was assigned to work on a project involving the ordering system, like the Amazon ordering system. And honestly, I knew nothing about distributed systems at that type of scale. I was surrounded by people who could casually talk about load balancing, database sharding, and resilience under load, like I talked about what I had for breakfast. And I didn't usually eat breakfast. My first instinct was to fake it. Nod along during meetings, hope nobody asked me direct questions, maybe try to wing it and figure things out as I went. But after weeks of feeling completely lost, I decided to talk to my manager. I went to my manager and said, "Hey, I'm really excited about this project, but I need to be honest. I don't have the background that I need to contribute meaningfully. I think it's best if I look for another team." Steve, none of the people that you're working with right now were born with that knowledge. Actually, it'd be really weird if you knew what you were doing. He connected me with one of the senior engineers, and I spent the next couple of weeks doing a crash course. I read internal documentation, studied system architecture diagrams and what they were trying to say, and I asked what probably felt like a million questions about how orders flow through the system. By the end of the month, I wasn't an expert, but I could contribute to the conversations and take up tasks that could move the project forward. This project was the thing that pushed me over the edge and got me my first promotion as a software developer, and it almost didn't happen because I wanted to move teams. And that's my point. It's not what you know, it's about how quickly you can learn new things. When I first started at Amazon, most of the website ran on Perl, an ancient and terrible language. I counted recently about 20 languages and frameworks that I've learned since then. High potential people don't know everything about everything. Instead, they're super selective about what they target, and then they put all of their energy into getting up to speed as quickly as possible. If you're wondering exactly how one gets up to speed incredibly fast, you're in luck. I just made a video on my method. It's the exact system I use to ramp up on anything super fast. It doesn't take any extra energy. It's just a framework that makes you as efficient as possible.